The metrics speak for themselves, Iris, Tucker said, leaning back in his chair with manufactured casualness. 3 clients have expressed concerns about your communication style. I sat perfectly still across from him in the glass-walled conference room where he'd summoned me without warning. My presentation materials for our biggest account lay forgotten on the table between us. Which clients? I asked, keeping my voice level despite the heat crawling up my neck. Tucker smiled that particular smile, the one that transforms his boyish face into something harder. That's confidential feedback, but the pattern is clear. You bite back too much in meetings. You challenge ideas too aggressively. You make people uncomfortable. The accusations stung with precision. After 4 years as the lead strategic analyst at this firm, after single-handedly saving the Reynolds account and tripling our healthcare portfolio, this was apparently my crime, refusing to package truth in pretty wrapping paper. I've never received this feedback directly, I said, thinking of the thank you notes in my desk drawer from those same clients. In fact, Westman Technologies specifically requested me for their project because of my directness. Tucker slid a printed document across the polished surface. This is a performance improvement plan. You'll need to demonstrate significant change in how you interact during meetings. More specifically, when clients or leadership present ideas, your role is to support, not criticize. The subtext was clear. Sit pretty, nod, smile. I scanned the document, my vision narrowing to a tunnel as I read the bullet points. Minimize confrontational language. Avoid challenging senior stakeholders directly. Demonstrate greater team alignment. I noticed this was drafted 2 weeks ago, I said, pointing to the date stamp, before the Henderson pitch where you presented my strategy as your own. Tucker's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his pen. This isn't personal, Iris. It's business. Your technical skills are excellent, but your attitude is becoming a liability. A liability to whom? I pressed, the question hanging between us. To the company, he replied smoothly. To the team culture I'm trying to build. The team culture where men like Pierce and Damon were assertive while I was aggressive, where they were strategic while I was calculating, where Tucker could claim my work without attribution because clients responded better to his delivery style. I've removed you from tomorrow's presentation to Keller Industries, he continued, clicking his pen rhythmically. Pierce will handle it, and I'm reassigning the Westman project to Andrea. The air seemed to vanish from the room. 4 months of research, strategy development, and testing, my work, handed to junior analysts who wouldn't understand the nuanced data relationships I'd uncovered. Those are my projects, I said, voice barely audible. They're company projects, Tucker corrected. And I decide who represents us to clients. I thought of the Keller Industries presentation waiting on my laptop, the one containing evidence that their current manufacturing approach would fail catastrophically under specific conditions. The analysis Tucker had dismissed as unnecessarily alarming when I'd shared it privately last week. The Keller presentation includes critical safety warnings they need to hear, I said. Pierce doesn't understand the underlying calculations. Pierce will stick to the approved content, Tucker replied, standing to signal our meeting was over. That's what makes him valuable. He delivers what's expected without making waves. I remained seated, the implications crashing over me. This wasn't about my communication style. This was about silencing information Tucker found inconvenient. One more thing, he added, pausing at the door. All client communication goes through me from now on. No direct emails, no calls. Consider it part of your improvement plan. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the PIP and the sickening realization that my career at this firm had just been effectively terminated, not with a firing, but with a slow, calculated suffocation. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a hidden folder. Inside were 47 client testimonials I'd been saving for my annual review, 12 industry awards our team had won based on my strategies, and most importantly, the acquisition offer I'd received last month from our biggest competitor. Tucker had made a critical miscalculation. He thought I was fighting to be heard. I was way past that. If you're following this story, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, what happens next is going to make you question everything you think you know about professional feedback. Comment below if you've ever been told to tone yourself down at work. I want to hear your stories while I comment. Share how I transformed mine. My name is Iris Lawton, and until that meeting, I'd been the quiet powerhouse behind 4 years of record growth at Premier Strategy Group. Not that anyone outside our client base would know it. My work appeared in industry journals under other people's names, My strategies were presented by men with deeper voices and broader shoulders. My discoveries were softened, sanitized, and stripped of my fingerprints before they reached executive boardrooms. I hadn't always been this invisible. I started at Premier fresh out of graduate school with my dual masters in data science and business strategy. Back then, the company was struggling, a boutique firm competing against giants. What we lacked in size, we made up for in innovation. That was the official line, anyway. The truth was messier. The innovation came from desperate analysts working 80-hour weeks to keep the lights on. I was one of them, sleeping under my desk some nights, subsisting on protein bars and determination. 6 months in, I spotted a pattern in our client data that everyone else had missed. A tiny behavioral signal that, when properly leveraged, could double conversion rates across all sectors. I compiled my findings, created a comprehensive implementation strategy, and presented it at the weekly team meeting. The room fell silent when I finished. Then Tucker, who'd been with the company just 2 years longer than me, asked a single question. "Did you validate this against historical data?" 3 years worth, I replied, sliding the supplemental analysis across the table. The pattern holds across all client categories. It's statistically significant at p less than 0.001. Tucker studied the numbers, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up with newfound respect. "Good work, Iris. Really good. Let me refine this a bit and take it upstairs." I didn't understand what refine meant until 2 weeks later, when the CEO announced a revolutionary new approach to client engagement developed by Tucker Hamilton, our rising star. The strategy was mine, verbatim, down to the implementation timeline I'd created. I should have left then. That's what I tell myself now. But instead, I convinced myself it was a fluke, a misunderstanding, perhaps even necessary politics I didn't yet understand. Over the next 3 years, it happened again and again. My work became the foundation of Tucker's meteoric rise to management. With each promotion, he brought me along just enough to keep me producing, but never enough to threaten his position. I became the secret weapon he deployed when accounts were failing, the problem solver summoned for impossible challenges, then hidden away when clients arrived. I stayed because the work itself was meaningful. I stayed because each successful project meant a client company thrived, jobs were saved, and sometimes, like with the healthcare clients, lives improved. I stayed because I told myself that impact mattered more than recognition. Until Tucker's latest promotion to Director of Client Strategy 8 months ago, that's when everything changed. Suddenly, my direct access to information was restricted. My communication with clients became inappropriate. My data-driven warnings about flawed approaches became unnecessarily negative. The pattern was clear in retrospect. Tucker had needed my capabilities when we were peers. As my superior, he needed my silence. The Keller Industries presentation was the breaking point. Their new manufacturing process contained a fundamental flaw that my models predicted would cause catastrophic failure within 18 months. When I brought this to Tucker's attention privately, showing him the simulations and risk assessments, he dismissed it outright. "These are theoretical edge cases," he said, barely glancing at my analysis. "Raising these concerns will just make them nervous about working with us." "These aren't edge cases," I insisted. "Under normal operating conditions, their system will fail. People could get hurt." Tucker's expression had hardened then, in a way I should have recognized as dangerous. "Your job is to help them optimize their business, not play safety inspector. I've made the decision. We're proceeding with the positive assessment." Now, sitting alone in the conference room with my career effectively ended, I realized what I should have seen long ago. This wasn't about communication styles or client relationships. This was about power, and what happens when truth threatens it. I gathered my materials slowly, my mind racing ahead to the Keller presentation tomorrow. If Pierce delivered Tucker's sanitized version, Keller would proceed with a fundamentally flawed manufacturing process. The resulting product failures would damage more than their bottom line. They could harm actual people. I couldn't let that happen. Not for my career, not for Tucker, not even for Premier. But direct intervention was now impossible. Tucker had cut off all my official channels. No client contact, no presentation role, no voice in the room. Which meant I needed to find an unofficial channel, one that couldn't be traced back to me until it was too late for Tucker to interfere. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, the folder of testimonials and evidence suddenly feeling like more than just professional validation. It was ammunition, and I finally knew exactly how to use it. I left the conference room and headed straight to my desk. My movements deliberate, unhurried. Anyone watching would see a woman calmly returning to work after a routine meeting. No one would notice my racing pulse or the calculations already forming in my mind. My cubicle sat in the corner of the open floor plan, partially hidden by a structural column, a location I'd once resented but now appreciated for its privacy. I slipped into my chair and turned to my computer, angling the screen away from passing eyes. The Keller Industries presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. Pierce would be delivering Tucker's sanitized version that omitted my critical findings about their manufacturing process. I had less than 24 hours to ensure the truth reached the right people without destroying my own career in the process. Rough meeting? I looked up to find Margot from HR standing beside my desk, her expression sympathetic. Margot had been with Premier since the beginning, outlasting 3 CEOs and countless reorganizations. Nothing happened at the company without her knowing. Just the usual strategy discussion, I lied, forcing a smile. Margot's eyes flicked to the PIP peeking out from my folder. Looks more serious than that. I hesitated, weighing my options. Margot wasn't just HR, she was the institutional memory of Premier. She had seen careers rise and fall, had witnessed the transformation from struggling startup to industry player. Tucker thinks I'm too direct in meetings, I said finally. Apparently, clients have complained. Which clients? Margot asked, echoing my earlier question to Tucker. That's confidential, apparently. Margot's lips thinned. I see. Something in her tone made me look closer. There was knowledge there, and perhaps an ally. Have others received similar feedback? I asked carefully. I'm not at liberty to discuss personnel matters, she replied, the company line delivered with perfect professionalism. Then more quietly, but my door is always open if you want to talk about documentation strategies for your own records. She placed a sticky note on my desk with her personal cell number before walking away, leaving me with the distinct impression that Margot knew exactly what was happening and had seen it before. I turned back to my computer and began typing rapidly, ignoring the emails flooding my inbox. Instead, I opened a secure cloud drive I'd created months ago, a habit born from watching too many colleagues lose access to critical files during hasty exits. The complete Keller analysis was there, along with my simulation models showing exactly how and when their manufacturing process would fail. I'd built these models nights and weekends, going far beyond what Premier had asked for because I couldn't stomach the thought of missed warning signs. Now, I needed to get this information to Keller without Tucker realizing I was the source. Direct contact was impossible. All client communications were monitored, and Tucker had explicitly banned me from reaching out. I needed a trusted intermediary, someone with direct access to Keller's decision-makers who wouldn't immediately report back to Tucker. My thoughts turned to Bennett Shaw, Keller's chief safety officer. We'd spoken exactly once, 6 months ago, when he'd called with questions about some preliminary data I'd included in an early report. Tucker had been furious that Bennett had my contact information, but the conversation had been illuminating. Bennett was meticulous, ethical, and deeply concerned about potential risks. If anyone at Keller would understand the significance of my findings, it would be Bennett. But how to reach him without using company channels? A memory surfaced, Bennett mentioning an industry conference he chaired annually. A quick search confirmed the Safety Innovation Summit was happening this week at the downtown convention center. Today was the opening reception. I checked the time, 4:17 p.m. The reception started at 6. I began gathering my things, moving with practiced efficiency. As I slipped my laptop into my bag, Damon from the analytics team appeared, leaning against my cubicle wall with his characteristic smirk. Leaving early? That's not like you, Iris the tireless. Damon had joined Premier 8 months ago, recruited directly by Tucker. He had half my experience, but twice my confidence, a combination that had quickly made him Tucker's favorite. Doctor's appointment, I said, not bothering to elaborate. Too bad. Tucker wants everyone here late tonight, prepping for the Keller presentation. Said it's all hands on deck. His expression suggested he knew perfectly well I'd been removed from the project. Pierce is nervous about stepping in last minute, almost like he doesn't fully understand the material. I'm sure you'll manage, I replied, slinging my bag over my shoulder. After all, Tucker says the technical details aren't what's important. It's the delivery that matters. Damon's smirk faltered slightly. You know how it is. Some people just present better. Some people just get presented better opportunities. I countered, stepping past him. Give Pierce my notes from the shared drive if he's struggling. The password is attribution matters. I felt Damon's eyes on my back as I walked away, but I didn't turn around. Let him report to Tucker that I was leaving early. By tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. The Safety Innovation Summit was being held at the Grand Plaza Hotel, a gleaming glass structure in the heart of downtown. I arrived just as attendees were beginning to filter into the reception hall, their name tags identifying them as safety officers, quality assurance directors, and risk management specialists from across the manufacturing sector. I scanned the room for Bennett, rehearsing what I would say when I found him. This wasn't just career suicide. It potentially violated my non-disclosure agreement, but the alternative was allowing a fundamentally unsafe product to reach consumers. Looking for someone? I turned to find a woman in her 60s observing me with sharp intelligence. Her name tag identified her as Dr. Helena Reed, keynote speaker. Bennett Shaw, I admitted. From Keller Industries. Ben stepped out to take a call. He should be back shortly. She studied me more closely. You're not registered for the conference. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. No. I need to speak with him about a safety concern that's being presented to his company tomorrow. It's time sensitive. Dr. Reed's expression remained neutral, but something in her posture changed. Safety concerns should never be filtered for convenience. That's how disasters happen. Exactly, I said, relieved at her understanding. There he is. She nodded toward the entrance where Bennett had appeared, phone still pressed to his ear. I'll introduce you. 5 minutes later, I was seated in a quiet corner of the hotel bar with Bennett Shaw, my laptop open between us. This wasn't in the materials Tucker sent over for tomorrow's meeting, Bennett said, frowning as he studied my simulation. It was removed, I replied carefully. Tucker felt it was unnecessarily alarmist. Bennett's frown deepened. These failure points occur under standard operating conditions. This isn't alarmist, it's basic safety protocol. That was my assessment as well. Why are you showing me this now, outside official channels? I met his gaze directly. Because I've been removed from the project and banned from client contact. The presentation you'll see tomorrow omits this data entirely. Bennett was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he asked, What do you want from Keller, Miss Lawton? I don't want anything except for you to have the complete information before making decisions that affect people's safety. What you do with this data is entirely up to you. This could damage your career, he observed. My career was damaged the moment I prioritized accuracy over politics, I replied. But I can find another job. The people who might be harmed by a faulty product can't find another life. Bennett closed my laptop gently. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll need to discuss this with our executive team tonight. I understand. As I gathered my things, Bennett added, For what it's worth, this is exactly the kind of ethical standpoint we value at Keller. Not everyone would take this risk. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The validation shouldn't have mattered. I'd done this for the principle, not the praise. But after months of being undermined and silenced, Bennett's simple acknowledgement felt monumental. I returned home to my apartment, the tension of the day settling into my muscles as I unlocked the door. The space was small but deliberately organized, books arranged by subject, kitchen tools hung in perfect alignment, work materials filed in labeled containers, control where I could find it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tucker called emergency meeting. Team working all night on revised Keller presentation, you mentioned. Not positively. Margot, I realized. Already looking out for me. I texted back, Thank you. So Tucker knew something was happening. Perhaps Damon had reported our conversation, or maybe Tucker's instinct for self-preservation had been triggered. Either way, he was moving to counter a threat he couldn't yet identify. What would he do? Likely prepare Pierce for potential questions about the safety data. Perhaps reach out to Keller executives to preemptively discredit any concerns. Definitely ensure I had no access to the building or systems before tomorrow's presentation. I checked my company email on my phone and confirmed my suspicion. Access denied. That was fast, even for Tucker. My computer credentials would be next. I opened my personal laptop and connected to the secure cloud drive, grateful for my paranoid contingency planning. Everything important was already backed up, safely beyond Tucker's reach. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Margot. Security directive issued. Your access suspended pending review. Officially, for system maintenance. So Tucker was cutting off all my avenues of intervention. Standard procedure when eliminating a threat. What he didn't understand was that I'd never planned to fight this battle on his terms. The information was already with Bennett. The choice to act on it belonged to Keller now. I sent one final text to Margot. I'll be in tomorrow as usual. Then I closed my laptop and prepared for bed with the same methodical precision I applied to everything. Tomorrow would bring either vindication or termination. Either way, I would face it with dignity. Morning arrived with cruel brightness, sunlight streaming through my bedroom window as my alarm chimed. I dressed with care, selecting a charcoal gray suit that projected confidence without demanding attention. My armor for the day ahead. The premier office was already buzzing when I arrived, the energy electric with pre-presentation nerves. I badged in without issue. Apparently Tucker hadn't thought to revoke my physical access, and made my way to my desk as though nothing had changed. Heads turned as I passed. Whispers followed. Word had spread about my removal from the Keller project, perhaps even about my PIP. In a company this size, secrets lasted hours, not days. Tucker emerged from his office the moment I sat down, his expression thunderous. Iris, a word. I followed him into the same conference room where he delivered his feedback yesterday, noting the tightness around his eyes, the barely contained fury in his movements. You've been busy, he said as soon as the door closed. I don't know what you mean, I replied calmly. Keller called at midnight. They want the presentation delayed. They've suddenly developed concerns about our analysis methodology. Tucker leaned forward. What did you do? Nothing that violates company policy, I said, which was technically true. I hadn't used company resources or disclosed proprietary information, only my own analysis of publicly available manufacturing specifications. You contacted them directly after I explicitly forbade it. I don't have contact information for anyone at Keller, I replied. Another technical truth. Bennett had been at a public conference. Tucker studied me, searching for the lie. The presentation is still happening. Pierce has been prepped for any safety questions. Whatever you're trying to accomplish won't work. I'm not trying to accomplish anything except ensuring Keller has accurate information for their decision-making. That's not your call to make. Tucker's composure cracked, his voice rising. You work for this company, for me. Your job is to deliver what I approve, not undermine strategy because you think you know better. I met his gaze steadily. My job is to provide accurate analysis that serves our clients' best interests. That's what builds lasting relationships, not hiding critical information to avoid difficult conversations. Tucker's laugh was bitter. You still don't get it. This isn't about accuracy. It's about business. Clients don't pay us to tell them their baby is ugly. They pay us to tell them how to dress it up. Keller isn't paying us to evaluate their baby's appearance. They're paying us to ensure their manufacturing process won't create products that harm people. The conference room door opened before Tucker could respond. Andrea, his assistant, appeared with panic in her eyes. They're here, she said. All of them. Who's here? Tucker demanded. Keller. Not just the project team, their entire executive leadership. CEO, CFO, Chief Safety Officer. They're all in the main conference room, and they're asking for Iris. Tucker's face drained of color. Why would they ask for Iris? Andrea shook her head. They wouldn't say, but the CEO looks serious, and they brought their legal counsel. Tucker straightened his tie, the gears visibly turning behind his eyes. Tell them I'll be right there with the project lead. They specifically asked for Iris, Andrea repeated, by name. Tucker's gaze snapped to me, accusation written in every line of his face. What did you tell them? The truth, I said simply. The walk to the main conference room felt like a dream sequence, time stretching and compressing in strange measures. Tucker strode ahead, already crafting damage control strategies. I followed at my own pace, strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I had done what was right. The conference room fell silent as we entered. Seated around the massive table were 9 people I recognized from the Keller organizational chart, including Bennett Shaw, who gave me a slight nod. At the head of the table sat Gregory Keller himself, the founder and CEO whose reputation for exacting standards was legendary in the industry. His silver hair and keen eyes gave him the appearance of a hawk watching potential prey. Mr. Hamilton, Gregory acknowledged Tucker with cool professionalism. And you must be Iris Lawton. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, despite the tension crackling through the room. Please, both of you sit down, Gregory continued. We have much to discuss. Tucker immediately launched into his prepared speech. Mr. Keller, I understand you have concerns about our methodology. I want to assure you that Premier Strategy Group stands behind our analysis 100%. If there's been any confusion, Gregory raised a hand, cutting him off. Mr. Hamilton, I'm not here to discuss methodology. I'm here because last night, our Chief Safety Officer received information suggesting your firm deliberately withheld critical safety data from our team. Tucker's smile never faltered, though his knuckles whitened where they gripped the armrest. There must be some misunderstanding. All relevant data was included in our reports. That's not true, Bennett said quietly. And I believe Miss Lawton can confirm that. All eyes turned to me. This was the moment Tucker had been dreading. The confrontation he'd worked so hard to prevent. I could feel his silent warning like a physical pressure, but I met Bennett's gaze directly. The presentation scheduled for today omits simulation data showing critical failure points in the proposed manufacturing process, I said. These failures would occur under standard operating conditions within 18 months of implementation. Tucker interjected. What Miss Lawton is referring to are theoretical edge cases that, they're not theoretical, I continued, my voice stronger now. They're statistically inevitable outcomes based on materials, stress analysis, and environmental factors. I identified these issues 3 weeks ago and brought them to Mr. Hamilton's attention immediately. And what was his response? Gregory asked. He said that raising these concerns would make Keller nervous about working with Premier. He instructed me to remove this data from the final presentation. Tucker's face flushed with anger. That is a complete mischaracterization of our conversation. Is it? I reached into my bag and removed a small digital recorder. Because I have the audio. The room went absolutely still. Tucker stared at the recorder as if it were a venomous snake. That's a violation of company policy, he said, voice barely audible. Actually, it's not. I met his gaze steadily. Premier's Employee Handbook, Section 11.3, states that employees may record conversations they participate in if they believe unethical practices are being discussed. I believed your instruction to withhold safety data qualified. I placed the recorder on the table. Of course, this recording only captures our most recent conversation. It doesn't include the 3 separate emails where I outline these concerns, or the meeting notes documenting your dismissal of them. Those are all available as well. Gregory Keller leaned forward. Miss Lawton, are you telling us that you have documentation proving your firm intentionally concealed safety issues that could have resulted in product failures? Yes, I replied. And I'm prepared to provide all of it to your team. That won't be necessary, a new voice said from the doorway. We all turned to see Elaine Morris, Premier's CEO, standing there with Margot from HR beside her. Elaine's expression was granite as she surveyed the scene. Mr. Keller, on behalf of Premier Strategy Group, I want to apologize for this situation. It appears there has been a serious breach of our ethical standards. She turned to Tucker. Mr. Hamilton, please go with Margot to clear out your office. Tucker half rose from his chair. Elaine, you can't possibly. I've heard the recording, Tucker. Margot brought it to my attention an hour ago, along with Miss Lawton's other documentation. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. As Tucker was escorted out, his final glare promised retribution. I watched him go, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction, only a profound relief that truth had prevailed. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of technical discussions. I walked the Keller team through my complete analysis, answering questions and outlining potential modifications that would address the safety issues without requiring a complete redesign. By the time we finished, Gregory Keller was nodding with approval. This is exactly the kind of thoroughness we expected when we hired Premier. I'm grateful you had the integrity to ensure we received it, Miss Lawton. After the Keller team departed, Elaine asked me to join her in her office. I prepared myself for the worst. Even with Tucker gone, I had still gone outside proper channels. Sit down, Iris, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I owe you an apology. That was unexpected. Ma'am, Margot has been collecting complaints about Tucker for months, but without concrete evidence, our hands were tied. Your documentation changed that. She studied me with new respect, though I wish you had come to me directly. I tried, I admitted. 3 times. Your assistant said you were unavailable. Elaine sighed. Another thing to fix. We've grown too hierarchical, too siloed. When good information can't reach decision makers, bad decisions become inevitable. She pushed a folder across the desk. I opened it cautiously, expecting another pip. Instead, I found a promotion letter with my name on it. Director of Client Strategy. I read aloud. Effective immediately. We need someone who values truth over convenience, Elaine said. Someone who understands that our real value to clients isn't telling them what they want to hear. It's telling them what they need to know, even when it's difficult. What about the team? Tucker built quite a following. Some will adapt, others won't. That's your challenge now. Elaine leaned forward. But first, there's the matter of the acquisition offer you received last month. I startled. How did you? Margot is very thorough, Elaine said with the ghost of a smile. I'd like you to decline it. Premier needs your voice, Iris. Not silenced or softened, but clear and direct. Will you stay? 3 weeks later, I stood in the newly remodeled strategy department. The glass walls had been replaced with an open, collaborative space. The hierarchy that had protected Tucker's behavior had been flattened. Every analyst now had direct contact with clients, with proper oversight, but without gatekeepers. The Keller project proceeded with my safety modifications fully implemented. 3 other clients requested similar reviews of their processes, creating a new service line that quickly became our fastest-growing revenue stream. Tucker found a position at a competing firm, where he reportedly described me as vindictive and calculating. Perhaps I was, but I had never planned an elaborate revenge or plotted his downfall. I had simply done what he never expected. I had kept records. I had built relationships. I had trusted that truth, properly documented, would speak for itself. The ultimate revenge wasn't destroying Tucker's career. It was creating a workplace where people like him couldn't thrive, while people like me couldn't be silenced. In the end, I didn't need to bite back. I just needed to show my teeth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about a time when speaking up felt risky but necessary. I read every single one. The workplace only changes when we refuse to accept that feedback is just another word for silence. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't fighting back. It's standing your ground and letting truth do the heavy lifting.